And on our global oil market update still, of course, this morning we saw oil prices mixed following 3 days of gains with the prospect of rapidly dwindling demand due to coronavirus travel bans and lockdowns offsetting hopes. A U.S. $2 trillion emergency stimulus will shore up economic activity. West Texas Intermediate crude futures slipped 4 cents to $24.45 in early trade, while Brent crude futures rose 12 cents to $27.51. Analysts say with lockdowns in many countries, expectations of oil demand contracting by more than 10 million barrels per day are rising. Such demand loss will increase the supply glut. The collapse of a supply cut pact between the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and other producers, led by Russia, is set to boost oil supply, with Saudi Arabia planning to ship more than 10 million barrels per day from May. The U.S. Energy Information Administration said on Wednesday that U.S. crude inventories rose by 1.6 million barrels in the most recent week, marking the 9th straight week of increases. Products supplied, a proxy for U.S. demand, dropped nearly 10% to 19.4 million barrels per day. And trading at the Nigerian equities market started remotely on Wednesday, with market closing marginally down by 0.05%. Temple has all the figures. Temple.
True. Thank you so much, Chimeze. Yes, we saw a marginal decline, 0.05%, perhaps because investors are still watching how the remote trading, which actually started yesterday, will pan out eventually. Because if you look at the volume of transaction, it was a 29% decline yesterday, and the value of the transactions that we saw in the market was also down by some 37 basis points, I mean, compared to what we did the previous day. So basically, we saw a situation where the all-share index of the entire stock exchange was at 0.05%, as we said earlier. And of course, in terms of the equity capitalization of the market, was down by some 6 billion naira plus, just a little above 6 billion naira, of course, which moderated the losses that we've been having in our year-to-date performance to some 17 points, basically, at this point in time. It's not so much of a difference, I mean, compared to what we had in the previous day. I said earlier that the volume of transaction was a decline of 29% in all. We saw 233.47 million units of shares traded yesterday alone for a value of 2.23 billion naira. Now, if you look at the volume, the major contributor to this was the 50 million units of shares that was traded on the stock of GT Bank. Of course, that's really contributed a whole lot to what we have here, and that was the most actively traded stock in the market yesterday. Now, for all of these values, and of course, you see 3,874. But if you look at the market breadth, I should say that we had 20 gainers compared to some 7 losers in the market yesterday. And of course, the gainers chart was actually led by Kiotics. Kiotics had a 10% addition, but for the loser side of things, we saw a huge sell pressure on the share price of Total, which has now dropped to 96 naira, and that's some 13.17% below its year opening of 110 naira per stock. But I should also add that Total has actually been very, very resilient in recent times, because the 96 naira that we found this particular company trading at this point is the 5-year lows for the price of this particular company. The lowest it has traded so far was at sometimes in May 2002, when it traded at 59 naira plus. But it is still at 96 naira, and over time, in spite of all the crises that we've been seeing in the market, Total has been very, very resilient. One of the reasons why we are seeing a bit of a sell pressure on Total at this point in time is, again, because the company has now cancelled its annual general meeting for this period. So basically, investors are looking for a way to sell down on these holdings there, and then see where you've seen lower valuations, and then you can lock down such funds there in this period of economic crisis, where we are seeing coronavirus ravaging the markets, and of course low oil price bringing so much of uncertainties, to the market. Let's look at the sectoral front, where we've got the banking stocks doing some 2.94%. You got Zenith Bank doing well yesterday. GT Bank also did well. We got FBN Holdings also making some cool gains, and even Wema Bank, a tier 2 bank, really, really doing well yesterday. All of the past marks that we saw on this particular companies, contributed to this level of about 3% increase that we saw on the banking segment. For the consumer goods side of the markets, we see Cadbury continue to maintain its momentum. It was up day on day yesterday by 9% plus. And of course, we got PZ, one of the food giants in the market as well, doing so well in the market yesterday and contributing to this gain of 17 basis points that we have in the market. So for the industrial segment of the market, industrial goods, we saw Kiotics also doing some 10%, and that was the top gainer in the market yesterday. That was the only company that actually had that gain, contributed more to the 35 basis points rise that we have in the industrial goods side of the market, including the 4.43% gain that we saw on WAPCO, which is a cement manufacturer in the markets. They both made a comeback yesterday and pushed up the indices of the industrial goods segment of the market. We have a 1.43% gain on the insurance segment of the markets. This particular segment has now been trimming its year-to-date losses in the market. I think it's beginning to flatten the curve as we speak, because again, quite a number of the insurance companies have been posting positive notices, to the market in terms of the recapitalization exercise that it is passing through, in spite of the fact, again, that we have COVID-19, rattling the financial markets at this point in time. So yesterday alone, we saw a Prestige Assurance, making a comeback and, of course, recording some good numbers that's pushed up the performance of the insurance space. Oil and gas, I spoke earlier about Total PLC, which is down by 10%, and that's impacted the sector very, very negatively yesterday because, again, investors are now giving cold shoulder to this particular company owing to the postponement of its annual general meeting. And if we look at the energy stocks, check what's on oil has gone. Nothing, no movement, in spite of just some 12,000 plus volume of the shares traded yesterday. Adova PLC has just 36,166. There was no movement on 11 PLC. Everyone is keeping fingers crossed on the delisting of this particular company from the stock exchange, in spite of what we're seeing in the market. O&O in recent time has been seeing some tractions, and of course, that's why we saw what we had there. Total, this is it again, moving down. For the NASD OTC, just a little bit interest on this side of the market was up some 25 basis points yesterday. We got 508.84 billion naira as the capitalization. But if you look at the volume, value, and deals, there were just 3 deals, and all of that took place on 2 deals on WAMCO PLC, and of course Niger Delta Exploration Production Company, which recorded just 1 deal yesterday because we saw some 2.2 million naira worth of transaction on that particular counter. That's the day-on-day performance of that particular company. I think they are preparing now to release their earnings. If you look at the fixed income side of the markets, yes, a bit of a mild trading on the bond side of things yesterday, but investors continue to look at the mid-end of the curve. If you look at the 23rd of February 2028 security, which we also reported yesterday, the performance yesterday was 106 naira 4 kobo, but that was 2 days ago, I'm sorry. But then yesterday it moved up by 24 kobo or 22 kobo rather, to show 106 naira 22 kobo. To explain what we're saying at the mid-end of the curve as well, if you look at the 17th of March 2027 security, we saw a situation where this moved all the way from 104 naira to 124 kobo. The bond auction yesterday was also quite impressive, in spite of the fact that we had just 2 key openings of 2035 paper and of course the 2050 paper. T-bills, almost ends of the markets. We're seeing interests at the head and of course the belly side of things, but not at the lower end. Chimazi.
Thank you very much, Tempo. Well, it's another trading day today, so we'll wait and see how things play out there. We'll take a quick break again, and when we come back, we cross over to London. Just stay with us.